So you're good to go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Yoga Philosophy Study Group. Coming to you from the Yoga Center of Chico. I'm Lauren Carley. With me is Tom Hassan, owner of the Yoga Center. In this series, we are currently studying Light on Life by BKS Iyengar. I don't know if you have the book, if you want to hold it up. It's got a colorful cover. Everybody recognizes it immediately. We're studying this book and how it relates to your life. And today we're studying the first part, the first 20 pages or 21 pages of chapter 2 on stability. I'll summarize the chapter. Tom will add his comments, and the recording will be put on the YCC's YouTube channel. These are also conducted in a live session at the YCC and broadcast live via Zoom, but those are not recorded. And the live sessions with the Zoom broadcasts occur on the fourth Thursday of every month, the fourth Thursday of every month, starting at 5:30 p.m. And anyone can join in their free sessions. If you go to the Yoga Center of Chico's website, you'll find links to the Zoom sessions and our emails and how to contact us if you want to be put on the mailing list or you have a question or comment. And now let's discuss and get an overview of Chapter 2, Stability in Light on Life by BKS Iyengar. I'm going to pick up where we left off in Chapter 1, which was really an introduction. And where the transition from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2 is where he introduces some overall perspectives. And I'm going to paraphrase or partially quote from a couple of the things that Iyengar wrote in the book. From Chapter 1, he says, the inner quest for growth and evolution that is profound and has transformation. I'm sorry, let me start over. He talks about the inner quest for growth and evolution that is profound and has transformational yogic journey that awaits the seeker of the truth. So this is an overall picture that he's giving. It's clearly a quest for growth and evolution meaning of our soul, and has transformational yogic journey, a transformational yogic journey. That's the carrot that he's dangling out there. And then he goes on in the beginning of Chapter 2, the introduction of Chapter 2, to talk about the physical body is not only a temple for the soul, but the means by which we embark on this inward journey to the core. And he talks a lot that I won't touch on here about in the introduction about different ways that people have seen the body, but I'm zeroing in on where he's headed, where he lands on this topic. And he also says, and I bring this up because I like it so much, I will say that this book is so densely packed that everybody reads it could give a different overview on it based on where they come from. And every time I've read the book, I've gotten something different out of it. That's how densely packed it is. It's simple to understand, but there's a lot in it. He says that the body is a field experiment. We are always asking questions. Also, out of the end of Chapter 1, if you recall, he gave us this great little visual about if you clean your house often enough, you might find that divinity has been sitting there all along. And it's a way of seeing. And I bring that up because I want to launch into the first part of Chapter 2 with my interpretation of what he's saying, or the way I see what he's saying as applying a way of seeing, applying your consciousness to your asana practice. And I want to do that by summarizing the subchapters. Tell me if this isn't Iyengar taking us on, starting us on the inward journey. It gives us the intro, a way of seeing, a way of applying our consciousness. He gives us his invitation. I've got several his invitation about the inner journey and about the body, the temple. The body is a temple. And then he has 5 subsections to this first part, the first part of this chapter. The first one's called The True Nature of Health, where he goes into more detail about overall health and the way we look at health, the way we commonly look at health, and the way he takes us deeper to look at our overall health. And then the next section is called Awareness. Every pore of the skin is like an eye. Now we're at the skin level. I can't help but think that when I first read this, it's like Mrs. Potato Head with all my eyes on the pore of my skin. Then he goes on to dynamic extension from the core to your being. So now we've moved from the overall picture of our health, external view, to the pores being eyes, to dynamic extension from the core, not just the physical core, but the spiritual core, outward. The next one is called relaxation, repose, and repose where he brings in the practices of breathing. And as most of us probably know, exhaling, we now know from science, triggers our parasympathetic relaxing nervous system. And then the last section in this first part is called lightness. So Iyengar's is inviting us to apply our consciousness to our asanas, and he's already taking us into and down this path from awareness to the skin, to the internal, to the breathing, to thinking light. He calls it in feeling light. And he gives a lot of examples in each section, but just looking at the titles, you already feel like you're heading on that journey. Going back to the sense of health and the overall picture, he has a way of saying that most of us, if we're not thinking in yogic terms, in a yogic manner, we just want to have our body not be a trouble to us. We just want to be able to get up in the morning and go through our routine. That's a good place to start, but Iyengar is inviting us to look at our overall health and work towards even better health. And I might add, from some of our experiences out here in Northern California, that there may be times when you are so glad that you practice your yoga practice, because there may be times where you can't practice for a month. And the depth of your practice is what's carrying you through the day. He says the true nature of health, shifting your thinking away from the minimum requirements that you put on your health, that it doesn't trouble you. But what if our complete health depends on our consciousness, on our way of seeing? What if we instead switch from, I just want to try to maintain my minimum, to looking at the other direction and going for the maximum? The big, what I call 3,000-year-old human experiment, asks the question, what happens when we apply our consciousness to our body instead of acting out of compulsion? It's paraphrasing what he is saying in that section. Most of us find ourselves walking through our day, moving through our day, reacting to the environment. Iyengar is inviting us to apply our consciousness to our movement. And then when we get into our asana practice, to make that a very conscious practice. He goes on in the next section to talk about purity and sensitivity, and says that these essentially equal clarity of perception, and that you can use that clarity of perception to allow judicious, precise action in your asana practice throughout the body and the mind. Asana practice can be a tool for you to not only develop the discipline, but also to do this work that Iyengar is talking about in this section, is including in your asana practice, working from the core out, not just the physical, not just the breathing, but also going into and working past your ego, applying your intelligence, your willpower, and so on, your spirit, your spiritual core. Let's see here. Okay. We were talking about purity and sensitivity. If you take purity and sensitivity, what Iyengar adds to that as you read through this part of the section is then adding your intelligence to your practice, your knowledge to this practice, and your wisdom to this practice. So pick a pose, any pose, and think about going from wherever you are with your practice today to applying, say, your knowledge and your wisdom to the practice, working from your core, from the inside out. An example of that I use in my teaching is Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. When you extend your arm out, when you first start doing, and I'm off camera, okay, when you first start doing the practice, this asana, you might extend your arm out, your wrist might not be strong. Oh, thanks, Tom. And then as you apply, thank you, more and more of your practice, your wrist and your hand will align with your arm. You'll extend your fingers out, you'll extend your arm out from your arm socket, and you may even feel stretch at the bed of your fingernails. It's a long way to come to feeling the tips of your fingers and the stretch in the tips of your fingers to where you started. It's a tiny little example, and I'm sure Tom has got lots and lots of examples that are better than this one of what happens when you do what Iyengar is talking about here. Iyengar also mentions, let the body be the doer and the brain the observer. In my own practice, I can tell you that when you train your brain to be an observer of whether it's your pranayama, your asana, be observer of your ego or your manas, even your intelligence, that is starting to apply it's a practical way to apply your core being to your asana practice. And Iyengar goes on to say the art of yoga lies in the ability to observe, to see yourself in the practice. And that's why I started off summarizing. It's a way of seeing is really what he's talking about. He uses different words for seeing, but in the end, that's what they are. Just ask yourself, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? This gets back to his giant experiment. Experiments are always asking yourself, why am I sticking my arm out? Why am I holding it at this level? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? The what and why of the experiment. Another thing that he mentions that I pulled out that I think is important and not talked about enough, and I want to highlight it, self-awareness. This is the self-observer. It's another way that Iyengar uses to express the self-observer, to observe yourself fully within yourself, without ego or pride. Okay, Trikonasana. As a teacher, I see this often enough in Trikonasana. The people will think that the goal is to get, let's say your right foot is out, to get your hand on the floor. And so they will collapse their spine, collapse their chest forward to get the right hand on the floor and say, aren't I a good yogi? Look at me. I got down far and got my right hand on the floor. An alternative way to look at that's a little bit, I think, in keeping with what Iyengar's saying is, if you're going to the right in Trikonasana, you might want to put your personal observation of yourself on your left hip. Get away from the floor, get away from the ego saying, oh, aren't I good? I got my hand on the floor, even though you've got the asana all collapsed. Rather, think about stretching your back, your left hip, all the way down your left leg, your back hip. Completely shift your consciousness to that other part of the body. Just little examples of what Iyengar is talking about here in this chapter. And then he goes on to talk about that extension. I think these are his terms, but Tom, you're going to help me out here. Extension is attention. I think that's more Iyengar talking as a teacher.
Well,
And then
dynamic
expansion is awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Extension. Yeah, you got it. Expansion is awareness.
It's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. And expansion is awareness. I think a way of it is teaching that he's come to these terms, but they really get you thinking when you're doing your practice. And then near the end, repose in the pose, where he brings in the breathing. And another teacher and I talk about this. How do you get a student to feel the pose inside their body? Feel the joints. And this is exactly what Iyengar is talking about. Number one, you got to engage your consciousness to feel. You can feel around in your body. You can feel the pores of your skin. You can feel how your breath is in the body. How about feeling not only how the breath is in your lungs and your diaphragm, but what about the breath, feeling for the breath in your fingertips, where you're getting that stretch that I was talking about? Food for thought. This is exactly what we're talking about here. And then finally, lightness. Think light, feel light. That's an echo back to Iyengar's presentation on overall health. You can either think, oh, well, I'm not doing too bad, nothing hurts. Or you can think, I just feel so light and airy today. I don't know if this happens to you, but watch for it in your asana practice. There are some days where you feel like you just float into a pose. And it may be where you're lifting half of your body off the floor, or you're supporting half of your body, and it just feels light. And it's something to latch onto and observe. If you're feeling light today, why can't you feel light tomorrow? So that's the first half of chapter 2, stability, the physical body, where Iyengar talks about an aspect of asana practice that usually doesn't get mentioned except in this group and in the Yoga Center Chico. Tom brings it into his classes all the time. So Tom, add to or correct anything I said.
Okay, well, first of all, it was a great presentation of the first half of the chapter. And the way that I sort of looked at this chapter, and just sort of a brief synopsis, is the first part, he's describing true health. And the big picture item that I got out of that was the harmony between the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, the organic body, all of the different layers that we talk about. So true health is a harmony between those. And if we look at the bigger picture of the book as a whole, these various sheaths, the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and so forth, our goal is a harmony between these. So true health, from what I'm reading, is a harmony between the various sheaths of the body. Then the middle and latter part of
I might add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just might add that there's a book out now called and he did. Iyengar didn't mention this book, but he mentioned the concept. The body keeps score. If you do not work on these things, the body will not forget, and it will keep score.
Absolutely, and you'll pay for it. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the other parts, the awareness, the dynamic extension, the relaxation, and the lightness, I look at them as components that you want to bring to the practice to give it more depth to allow you to go deeper in. Awareness is pretty easy. Lauren gave a great example of it, that extending the awareness out to the fingertips. And you really want to be able to do that with all of the skin everywhere. That awareness then leads to sensitivity. Okay, that sensitivity then leads to a feedback loop between your brain and your body through the asana. That's this whole awareness piece. Then through that, you then get to this awareness where you start to pay attention to things more closely. And let's put it inside. And you have to have harmony here too. So what's to say if the brain and body are having a conversation and the brain says, I want to do Padmasana, full lotus, where you put your legs on your hips. And the body says, hey, my knee isn't ready for that. And the brain has to be humble. The brain has to back up and say, I can only do what the body does. So this is the harmony he speaks about between the body and brain. And that needs to be established, because if the brain takes over, you're just going to hurt yourself more. And that's certainly not a good thing. Dynamic extension is wonderful. It's that feeling of extending out and growing tall from the core. Now imagine a sphere. In the middle of the sphere, dynamic extension is expansion in all directions, So from the core of our being, we want this dynamic extension to extend in all areas. Then the relaxation. There has to be a reflection or a repose in what you have done. This then leads to this mental decision about changes or not changes based on your reflection inside. That's a Dhyana Maya Kosha that we'll look at quite a bit later in the text. And then, of course, the last piece was the lightness. And, every time we ask you to pick up and spread your toes or lift your arches or lift your chest, we're, as yoga teachers, striving for you to come into contact with that inner lightness, that inner freedom. And it's there. You have to tone the body up to create it. Anyway, that's my take on chapter 2, first part. Lauren?
Great. Well, we'll wrap it up here. If you are seeing this in time or anytime, you're welcome to join us for Thursday of every month at 5:30 Pacific Daylight Time on the YCC Zoom link, which is on their website. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you. Take care.